Even though I talk to AI more than I talk to God, it's a different relationship.
What happens when a Christian, an AI expert, and a social commentator walk into a bar? It's no joke.
AI can write prayers, but it can't pray.
I don't think we should ever fully trust AI in the way that we trust God.
I see what you're saying, but I disagree.
It's the start of a real conversation.
AI having that kind of level of control could be a significant shift, certainly in the way in which humanity operates.
It's sounding like Mark
It is sounding like that.
Where are we going with this?
3 ways of seeing the world, 1 bar, and all the questions that connect us. Pull up a store and see who's coming into my bar. Today we're asking, is AI the answer to everything, and do we still need belief? Why don't you guys introduce yourself, and what's your relationship with AI?
I'm a social commentator, and me and AI are locked in.
I'm a vicar, and me and AI are, I suppose I'm looking at it with intrigue.
I'm an AI expert. I do it for work. I use AI at home, and I appreciate it, but it's also worrying in some ways.
I have found that a lot of AI experts say they believe in it, it's great, but they also find it worrying. Can you touch upon that, why you find it a little bit worrying?
Well, I mean, AI is a dualistic technology, so it has a potential for good, but it also has a potential for bad. I guess when you have the inside seat on some of the ways in which AI is being trained and being used, then you can see some of the dangerous side of it.
Do you think that some of the faith that people used to put in religion is now being put a lot into AI?
I'm sure there will be parameters in the human race which will turn to it and maybe lift it up in some exalted fashion. We always create idols that end up destroying us traditionally. So I think there'll probably be an element of that, but it won't replace true faith. When it comes to faith and religion, and certainly from a Christian perspective, embodiment, being present with someone and being present with God is essential, I think, to our human soul's call. That we long to be with each other, and AI cannot do that.
Before someone maybe says, God, what's the answer to this? Or, you know, we were just having a conversation about speaking to God and that. So before they say, God, help me with this, they maybe go to ChatGPT and say, what do you think about this? Or how should I deal with this? And I think there are maybe some of that is happening.
Yeah, I think one of the things about AI is it's the great filter. It's becoming the filter for our lives, right? And so perhaps we're losing some of the disciplines of pondering, talking to lots of other people, researching, just sitting with the uncomfortableness of a question for some time before we leap to the answer. And I think some of that discipline and patience is actually important. And so when you're using AI, you have to bring some of those same skills from the old world into the new world.
See, I feel like AI is a threat to organised religion. So people doing online churches. I think that's where it all started.
Yeah.
And then after that, people started to see, and the corruption within churches has become exposed, especially these Pentecostal churches, where pastors are making a lot of money buying expensive jets. And it's like, why do I need to go to that church where someone's going to take tithe off me, take money off me, when I can go to AI and, you know, start asking AI these questions about different sermons? If I want to read a certain scripture in the Bible that I don't understand, I can get AI to interpret it for me. And I feel like the more and more that goes on, the less people are going to be more focused on organised religion and going to churches every Sunday. And they're going to know that actually I've got the backstop where I can just go to AI.
We had an interesting, and maybe this is applicable, we had an interesting debate around communion, so the Eucharist, you know, the bread and the wine. So when we were in lockdown, one of the questions was, how do we do communion? It's such an important part of being a Christian. And can I, as the priest, do that prayer? And can that prayer, in a sense, translate through the Zoom call into people's rooms? And can they actually have a sacramental moment in their bedroom or in their kitchen or in their lounge? We were trying to think these questions through, what does it mean to be able to do that prayer in that moment? And where we drew the line was it couldn't be recorded and used later. It had to be in a moment live in the presence of the people doing it. And when we said, you know, lift up your bread and wine, people would lift up to the camera. And so it's the intention in that moment to do it there, which was live and active, that allowed people to be like, okay, this is a real sacramental moment.
thought you was going to say you drew the line at what quality of bread it was.
Yeah.
Like,
Was
you
it
can't-
sour?
yeah, like we don't know bread. That's
Tesco's
not allowed.
fine.
yeah.
kind of wine?
So, Reverend Chris, I wanted to ask you, where are you starting to see people relying on AI within faith? And is that something that we should feel comfortable with?
There's a kind of big, broad spectrum of people pastors who won't go near AI and pastors that might actually use it to write their sermons, their whole sermons. So both, I think, are problematic on the wings.
How do you feel about someone writing their whole sermon off AI?
Yeah, I think with that, you could literally say to AI, write me a sermon, like this coming Sunday is Palm Sunday. You could say, write me a sermon on the triumphal entry on Palm Sunday, and it would just, and that's not really you giving it much prompt. It's just you saying, write me a sermon on this. So I think you can do that, and I think that's lazy. I think it's not spirit-led or filled, and I think if we use too much of AI to infiltrate, if that's the right word, or if we use it too much to write our sermons, then we lose a sense of actually what our calling is, our vocation is to speak and for God to use us through it. However, having said that, I do sometimes use AI for...
I was going to say...
Yeah, I mean, you're going to try and catch me out.
Oh, yeah.
So
Get in there before
I'm sure
me.
everyone uses it for work. So the way that I would do it is give me 5 verses from Matthew's gospel where Jesus is talking about something. It's like, poof, here it is. Or give me the 7 I am sayings in John's gospel, poof, and it will give me it. So it's definitely useful, but I always want to bring my own personal stories, my own sense of what the Spirit is leading me into. So I think it's how you use it, and also having a good grasp of it, and having a good grasp of your information means that you can still produce your voice, because it can be wrong.
Right.
It's not always right.
I mean, I think there's whether it's in faith, whether it's in religion, or whether it's in the world, the 2 things that I think are really important are authenticity. I think more and more people want authentic voices in the world, and sometimes AI basically just regurgitates what everyone else has just said, right? AI doesn't really create anything new because it's just trained on the past. And so that authenticity, so when you see people saying things and if it's written content and you see the long dash or you see the structure of how a sentence is put together, you can spot that really quickly.
This is my issue with pastors or preachers using AI. It means anybody can become a pastor.
Yeah.
And this is why we just got a lot of motivational speakers that are just good at talking to people, becoming pastors. I believe before you become a spiritual leader, you have to do the work. Either getting a theology degree or actually going to, I don't know, Bible school or I don't believe pastors should be using AI to preach, just because I just feel like it muddies the waters.
Yeah, we get a lot of TED Talks from the pulpit. We actually want spiritual
The
nourishment.
shade. No, joking.
But that goes back to what you were saying before, right? Which is, being able to use it as like a replacement for church, right? But actually then the AI is just going to feed you everything that you want to hear, as opposed to the critical questioning or the choice of some topics that nobody wants to hear about but need to hear about.
Do you think you would know, though, if you heard an AI sermon? See, me personally, I might just think, oh my God, they're so smart.
Yeah.
Like, how did they put all of that together, not them drawing from here? Do you think you would know? You would be able to feel it?
I wouldn't know unless I was able to question the vicar.
Do you think we're creating a space where people might begin to see AI as a higher power?
I think AI is a higher power in a transactional sense, right? Like we have the ability to ask it questions of all the world's knowledge in a way that we never could previously. So in that sense, it's a higher power. Is it the equivalent of God? No. They're fundamentally different categories, right? Technology, AI, is an enabler. It's an efficiency tool. God is like, it's way different. It's a context. It's a destination. It's a relationship. We might talk about relationship and AI later, but it's fundamentally 2 different categories.
I think there's you can read some divine qualities into AI if you really want to turn it on its head. In a sense, like there's an omnipresence. It can feel like AI is going to be everywhere and it's accessible everywhere. There's a way of, you can ask it questions. You can, in a sense, offer it like, prayers, asking it stuff, and it will give you answers and it will give you what it's regurgitating up. So there's a sense of it. It has no real desires other than you being using it. So there are qualities that I think if you go in a kind of shadowed, morbid sense, you could see as divine-esque qualities, but the relational and it's not good. As a human, I think we're built up of body, soul, and spirit, and it certainly doesn't have that.
How often do you use AI?
Wow. Started with me.
Yeah,
I use it every
often?
day. I use it
Every day?
Yeah.
And so how many times a day?
I'll probably say, so I use it at work, my 9 to 5, like literally every minute of every hour, because we have to.
Right.
And then outside of work, my social commentary, I can't go and troll the internet for different topics or different talking points that people are talking about. So I'll go to AI and be like, look, give me this week's trending topics that everyone's talking about. And I use it in that sense. But to your point, if I can add, in terms of AI being a higher power.
Wait, that's what I want to know.
Oh, okay.
And then are you Christian?
I am Christian.
And how many times do you pray to God a day?
Hello.
Because...
Objection.
Your Honor.
Because
Yeah.
if you chat to AI more than you chat to God, then technically it's replacing the higher power in your life.
I see what you're saying, but I disagree.
Okay, yeah, go.
Respectfully. So yes, I pray twice a day. And I do speak to AI probably more than I speak to God, but for different reasons. I feel like the reason why AI can't replace God in my life is because God is almost like, it's like my belief system, right? And like I have faith in God. And when you have faith in something, you don't necessarily need a model. So I feel like AI can't replace that essence of having faith in the unknown, so to speak, because it relies too much on probabilities. Whereas like my faith in God is more like I rely on the unseen and the unknown. So even though I talk to AI more than I talk to God, it's a different relationship.
The kind of the probabilistic nature of AI in that it's trained on data that happened in the past, God doesn't tend to behave that way. So like the resurrection story is really unlikely for an AI to predict that, right? That's why they're also two fundamentally different characteristics, like infinite creativity versus trained from data. And so I think AI doesn't really respond and react like a higher power.
AI can write prayers, but it can't pray. It's kind of a...
So what I'm kind of getting from this is that you're a little bit standoffish with AI, so you can't put your full trust in it. But if we get to a point where you can trust it, do you think that would strengthen your faith in it and then maybe at some point more than religion?
I don't think we should ever fully trust AI in the way that we trust God. We have LLMs that have been trained by corporations for a certain purpose, right? They want to train a worldview. They want to create a model of the world. They want to create some narrow AI use case. But what if the church actually took a role in that as well and started to train a model that was specifically like a church LLM, something that incorporated the belief system of that version of church? Then I might be willing to trust that LLM more.
Because my thing is, right, is God, essentially, we can't see God, right? And we've been told about God from man, the Bible, etc. But AI is actually made by humans that I know exist. So why shouldn't I trust in that more than something that I actually don't know exists? So that's where I'm a bit like, what's the difference?
I think AI can only point you towards God. So it's not gonna let you actually know God, right? It deals in information, it deals in ones and zeros. So it can only point you towards something else. And in the end, God is about faith. It's not about purely intellectual arguments.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, even if, to your example, we got to a point where, let's say there was an AI app that was just for Christians, right? And we can trust it because it was built and programmed by Christians, I still wouldn't trust it. I'm a skeptic. I mean, not to be that guy, but if you look back in the days of slavery, how they used religion to subjugate the slaves, how do I know the person that's going to program this AI app is not going to do it in a way that I don't know is going to make me think a certain type of... Do you know what I mean? I wouldn't trust man.
But do you trust the Bible, though?
Yes, in a way.
But the Bible was written by man.
But God, help me here. God was speaking to the men that wrote through inspiration.
Yeah. Scripture's God-breathed, we would say. As a Bible-believing Christian, you would believe that it's in partnership with man that God's created the Bible.
But could we also do that with AI, I guess is the point, right?
Well,
Thank you.
Now look.
Do we think that the people developing and building AI are putting enough thought into how it can shape people's beliefs and not just behaviour?
Yes, 100%. As in, they are intentionally shaping our belief systems. So there are examples of taking things like, say, Wikipedia, and them intentionally taking all of that under Creative Commons license and then applying their version of the world to that and generating more content of that and actually reshaping historical facts, reshaping facts about people in society that we might consider to be celebrities that have been proven to be not true. Some people would say when we create the AI, we have to have a much greater diversity of people that sit at the table. Not just technologists and data scientists, as brilliant as they are, but also people with real lived experience.
If we get to a point where AI does become like the primary source of truth, then what happens to all the other belief options that we have?
You know, we could talk about AI in the sense of we ask it a question and it gives us an answer. So that's one sense in which it can be like an answer engine for us. But to take that one step further, you could say we're moving into a world whereby AI is actually taking actions for us. It might start processes we never asked it to start. It might transact for us. It might negotiate for us. It might plan for us. It might reorganize for us. And in that sense, I think AI having that kind of level of control could be a significant shift, certainly in the way in which humanity operates, right? Then you go to not just you still having a relationship with, say, one agent or one AI, but multi-agent systems where agents and agents come together to orchestrate things together, right? And then there's a kind of the sense in which we form relationships with those AIs. And so I think that sense in which AI becomes the overall governing thing in our lives is without question gonna offer some advantages, but also some serious complications.
I'd rather Christians be in the field. The incarnation, in the sense of God becoming man, is a signpost of God stepping into the world, and I think that there's a theology around us as Christians stepping into places to help renew and revive and resurrect and restore. So I think there's a defining of reality, which is AI is here. It is going to be here for a while, and we can step into that, or we can, bury our heads in the sand and see what happens.
How do you think people who are in faith should cope or respond to the rapid change of technology? Should they embrace it or, proceed with caution?
I mean, wisdom would say you should be cautious. I think Christians historically haven't always, when the printing press came about, we probably said it was the devil. When, trains and steam trains happened, some of us are like, oh no, it's the devil, your heads will explode. And the internet came along. And so I think Christians there's always been like knee-jerk reactions, which have been like, it's the devil. And I think there is a proper Christian approach, I would say, is to, in faith, hear and then test.
Do we think the rise of it is making us rethink what being a human is?
Yes. I think if you look at technology shifts that have happened in the past, I don't think there's been one that has affected humanity so much as this one, right? This is actually influencing and shaping the way that we think. I think also there's an element of human plus machine that we haven't ever encountered before. So the physical implants of AI into, say, a human brain, the ability to be able to download signals from the brain or to be able to upload signals to the brain that can actually alter what a human body is able to do, I think are fundamentally different to technology revolutions of the past.
That sounds very scary.
It does.
Does it?
Brain chips.
So
that will probably be useful for someone who maybe has like cerebral palsy or has been disabled. It's not. I don't think it's like the Matrix. Like, help me do judo.
Sounding like Mark of the Beast.
It is sounding like that.
Well, the mark of the beast is in Revelation 13 is an interesting thing to think about quickly, because if you really, this is kind of a dark thought, but bear with me. But if you go down the thinking of eventually governments will become powerful enough that they'll realize that if anyone goes to war, we're all dead, we're all done. So what if the governments of the world came together and they voted into one parliament, and then eventually there's one person over it, and then that one person uses a massive AI kind of superstructure to help run the world? Then you're getting into kind of some scary Revelation stuff where it says, you know, the mark of the beast, you have to wear something on your right hand or your marking on your forehead that will enable you to buy and sell in the market, and if you don't wear these, you'll be killed. And like, I don't know, Revelation is something, you know, it's a dream interpretation, so I wouldn't want to be too, you know, lots of Christians and people have got themselves in trouble by saying, Revelation means this. But it is worthy of holding that tension and saying, where are the lessons to be learned from, where are we going with this?
So if we think that belief is changing and faith is changing, what do we think it's going to look like in the future?
Faith, I think, is belief, followed by trust, followed by commitment. The message stays ultimately the same. The delivery method, perhaps, the way in which we gain the information can change, and AI, we know, has helped with that in terms of give me a Bible verse or, you know, Bible apps. The delivery method can change. But the gospel itself is eternal. And, you know, Jesus said, I am the beginning and the end. I'm the Alpha and the Omega. All things have come from me. All things will return. Ultimately, you know, we were talking about the mark of the beast earlier, but after that, we have, you know, the kingdom coming and Christ coming and destroying the beast. And, you know, we have a hope in Christ. So ultimately, the victory is in Christ. And as Christians, we have that hope and we don't need to be afraid. But we should have wisdom dealing with it.
What do you think?
Yeah, and I feel like AI, it has its limits, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of the fact that most of its answers or its way of thinking is all based on data. So it's going to give you limits, whereas my faith in God, it cannot be shaken because my faith in him makes me do things that I don't even believe are possible. Or I don't believe, for me anyway. So I feel like with AI, it will always have that limit. Like even if I was to ask it certain questions in terms of, okay, I did this, will so-and-so forgive me? AI doesn't know so-and-so. Do you know what I mean? No matter how much I try to tell them what so-and-so looks like or they're thinking about, they don't know that. Whereas if I speak to God, I don't know, I feel like I get that answer. I get that answer from God within my heart and be like, yeah, that person will forgive you. Well, I've forgiven you, do this and this. So I feel like AI, it will always be limited. No matter how much data we feed it, it cannot replace the relationship we have with God and with religion.
I'm going to take a slightly different slant. I think actually we might see more sovereign AIs developing. So, for example, the Middle East not wanting to accept just US AIs. We might see those sovereign AIs shaping belief systems because they inherently want to protect their cultural and their ethnic backgrounds and their belief systems. So I think we might see a fracturing of that. Because of the agendas of governments, states, regions, etc., and therefore also politics. The other angle is probably that I think we're going to move to a world where we're going to have less and less screens. So we're going to move to much more of an ambient AI. So whether that's worn or some other thing that hasn't yet been conceived of, I think we're going to move away from these kind of physical interfaces. And so AI, and particularly voice-based AI or sensory AI, just understanding and learning my body, is going to become more prevalent. So I think, therefore, things like physical texts are going to become less and less.
I believe that new generations will rise up with a better and adequate capacity to deal with it. They will have resources and understandings that I don't think we have. And they will hopefully be able to navigate those things in ways that we now can't understand. So I have hope that this, a new generation who do grow up with it won't just be consumed by it, but will be able to navigate it. That's my hope.
I don't think so.
Yeah, fair.
No, because I think about when I had my mobile phone and my gran was like, you're always on that phone. And my gran's generation did not want anything to do with mobile phones. Now look at us, we're just hooked to our mobile phones. So in a sense, she was right. Do you know what I mean? We should have maybe put it down for a little while. So I think we can tell the younger generation, don't use it all the time, doesn't make sense. But like we're saying, if they've been brought up on it, they don't know any different. Like, I can't speak to young people without them telling me that I'm wrong or let me go and check Chat GPT.
But then you're doing a job when you're on social media and you've got this, and it's probably because your understanding of having a phone and technology is advanced enough more than your gran. So part of your life is benefited by you being connected, by you being relevant, by you speaking and having connection. And likewise, in your future generations, we might go, oh, that's crazy, but they will have a more adequate response and be able to navigate that better than we understand.
Do you think that our constant search as humans to always find something bigger will actually like outlast any sort of technology revolution?
I think generally, yes. I think our search for meaning is going to continue, and there will be more technology revolutions that will be lesser than our ultimate search for truth.
Yeah, I feel like if you look back to who created the telephone? That wasn't Edison, was it? That was the light bulb.
Bell?
Bell, yeah, Bell. If you had told him in the future we're going to be able to have a device that you can actually video call people where they are, I'm pretty sure he would have been content with that. We don't need any more advances past that.
Yeah.
But even once we got to that stage, we still want more innovation. We want phones that can, be on the palm of our hand and, you can do, virtual reality and stuff like that. Humans are just never satisfied when it comes to innovation. And I don't think it's ever going to stop. We're going to continue innovating until God knows when.
Till we can like turn into jelly.
Literally, or
Like Alex Mack. Do you remember that, Phil?
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Great. Oh, great.
Oh gosh, I'm showing my age here.
I think also it's worth rereading some of those texts that were like written way back, right? In the like your George Orwell 1984 or Isaac Asimov, like some of those stories that they wrote back then of like, someday you'll be able to communicate through a white disc to the other side of the world, like those were prophetic predictions of what is happening now. And some of the sci-fi films absolutely are bang on some of the things that we're seeing now.
What would you say, in moderation, how do we use AI without it kind of taking over our faith, our belief, even us as humans, our thought process? What would you say is the safest way?
You use it, but you always apply your critical thinking. Always be conscious of the echo chamber that you're putting yourself in with AI, and AI drives social media, it drives the news that you read on your phone. That's not, like, the news that you read is fundamentally different to the people that sat next to you. So it's constantly reinforcing what you want to know or the subjects that you like about. So that diversity of opinion around you is super important.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for coming into my bar. I've learned a lot. I can all feel it downloading right now. If I had some AI glasses on, it would have been able to store it for me. Yeah. But thank you. Honestly, I've really enjoyed this conversation. As always, go over to the 48 YouTube where you can like, subscribe, and comment, and you can join the conversation.